August 29, 2023, board meeting to order. Before we begin, I'd like to read a message. This public meeting of the Philadelphia Board of Pensions and Retirement is being conducted in person in the board's conference room at the offices on the 16th floor of 2 United Center. Pursuant to section 21-1503 of the Philadelphia Code, electronic recording for this meeting will be made through Microsoft Teams conference technology and by an audio recording. Electronic recording will be made available to the public online on the board's website without charge within 10 days. Please note that you consent to such recording by attending, participating, or speaking at such meeting. I'd also like to note for the record that Charlotte Murphy, one of our trustees, is participating remotely today. Could board members, we ask Cheryl to please speak.
Good morning.
Morning.
And for the record, I'll confirm that other trustees were able to hear her. Our first order of business is a motion to adopt the rules of order that the board has approved and used for our in-person meetings that are recorded. The purpose is to ensure that an accurate and complete audio recording and visual recording of the meeting occurs to comply with the code requirements. Item 1 is a motion to adopt these procedures for today's meeting. A motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, go to the roll. Brian, Charles, Marcia, approved. Vanessa, approved. Sherilyn,
Approve.
Roosevelt,
Approved.
and Paul.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. And I'll also note for the record that Carol Stooks-Baylor, our vice chair, one of the trustees, is absent for today's meeting. Item 2, a motion to approve the minutes from our July meeting was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 2? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
Approved.
Charles,
Approved.
Marcia, approved. Vanessa, approved. Sherilyn,
Approve.
Isabel,
Approved. Approved.
motion carries unanimously. Item 3, a motion to approve 116 pension applications and 74 withdrawal applications was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Brian,
Approved.
Charles,
Approved.
Marcia, approved. Vanessa, approved. Sherilyn,
Approve.
Roosevelt,
Approved.
Paul.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. Section 4, case 4A, the motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Kathy Raymer was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I abstain.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
Deny.
Abstain.
Paul.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 noted abstentions. 4B, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Jorge Soto was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4B? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
Approved.
Charles,
Approved.
Marcia,
Approved.
Vanessa,
Approved.
Sherilyn,
Approve.
Roosevelt,
Approved.
Paul.
Approved.
The motion carries unanimously. Case 4C, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for David Henry was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4C? Hearing none. Brian,
Approved.
Charles,
Approved.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
Deny.
Paul.
Approved.
And as the chair, I will vote to deny, which means the case fails 4-4. 4D, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Amanda Levy was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4D? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
Approved.
Charles,
Approved.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
Deny.
Isabel,
Approved.
Paul.
Approved.
Vote was 4-3, and as the chair, I will vote to deny, so the motion fails 4-4. 4E, A motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Felix Nozick made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4E? Hearing none, go to the roll call. Brian,
I approve.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Rosabelle,
I approve.
and Paul.
I approve.
The motion fails 3-4. For F, the motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Mariano Santiago was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4F? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call. Brian,
I approve.
Charles,
Approve.
Marcia,
Approve.
Vanessa,
Approve.
Sherilyn,
approve,
Roosevelt,
Approve.
and Paul.
I approve.
Motion carries unanimously. 4G, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Angela Turner Gaines was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4G? Go to the roll. Brian,
I approve.
Charles,
Approve.
Marcia,
Approve.
Vanessa,
Approve.
Sherilyn,
approve,
Roosevelt,
Approve.
Paul.
I approve.
Motion carries unanimously. Case 4H, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Karen A. was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4H? Brian,
Abstain.
Marcia,
Deny.
Charles,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Paul.
Stay.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions. 4I, the motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Suzanne Tucker was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4I? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
Abstain.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Roosevelt, Paul.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions. 4J, motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Brian Axt was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4J? Hearing none. Brian,
Abstain.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Abstain.
Paul.
Abstain.
The motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions. 4K, a motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for William Bowerly was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Brian,
Abstain.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Paul.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions. 4L, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Carmen Enriquez was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4L? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call. Brian,
Abstain.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Paul.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions. 4M, a motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for Janet Everett Sway was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4M? Hearing none. Brian,
Abstain.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Paul.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions noted. And case 4N, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Ryan Lewis was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4N? Hearing none, go to the roll. Brian,
I approve.
Charles,
Approve.
Marcia,
Approve.
Vanessa,
Approve.
Sherilyn,
approve,
Approve.
motion carries unanimously. Section 5, Case 5A, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Edward McGee was made and seconded. Any discussion on 5A? Hearing none. Brian?
I approve.
Charles?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Sherilyn?
Approve.
Roosevelt? Paul?
I approve.
Motion carries unanimously. Case 5B, motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Elizabeth Guerrero was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 5B? Hearing none. Brian? Charles?
Deny.
Marcia?
Deny.
Vanessa?
Deny.
Sherilyn?
Deny.
Roosevelt?
Deny.
Paul?
Deny.
Motion fails 0-7. 5C, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits beyond the one-year deadline for James Williams was made and seconded. Any discussions in case 5C? Brian?
I'll stick.
Charles?
Deny.
Marcia?
Deny.
Vanessa?
Deny.
Sherilyn?
Deny.
Paul?
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions noted.
Jackie, real quick, you mentioned that was a vote to, for beyond the 1 year deadline. That's not what I want. This was a vote for the disability pension, is that right? Class C. Here on the record.
Thanks, Brian. Double check. And you, all right. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You want me to do the motion?
Did you answer? You answered?
I didn't go through the call yet.
Okay. No, yeah, I'll be good. We'll do the next.
Okay, so for case 5C, my apologies, the motion is to approve the service connected, the application for service connected disability benefits for Terrence Williams. That motion was made and seconded. Any discussion?
Williams, just for.
James Williams.
James Williams. By C.
Put those back to back. That should be a meeting.
Sorry,
It was good. We got split today.
my copy really is not fit in. All right, we'll go through it again just for clarity. 5C, motion to approve service connected disability benefits for James Williams. Made and seconded appropriately. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'm gonna go through one more time. Brian,
I'll see.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
Deny.
Abstain.
motion fails 0-4 with 3 noted abstentions. It's 5G. This is regular beyond. Yeah, but regular. Okay, the motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Terrence Williams was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 5D? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I'll stay.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
Deny.
Abstain.
Paul.
Abstain.
The motion fails 0-4 with 3 noted abstentions. That moves us to section 6, case 6A, a motion to approve the application for service-connected death benefits regarding John Flood was, the deceased was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 6A?
Jack, if I make a motion to table this for 30.
Single case 6A, just for 15.
Hey, 30.
Revised motion to table case 6A for 30 days was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on the revised motion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I appreciate it.
Charles,
Approved.
Marcia,
Approved.
Vanessa, Sherilyn,
Approve.
Isabel, Paul.
Approved.
Revised motion carries unanimously. Section 7, case 7A, the motion to approve the application for survivorship benefits for Russell Tyler was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 7A? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I can.
Charles,
Approved.
I'm sorry. Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Carolyn,
deny,
Phil, and Paul.
And I deny.
The motion fails 1-6. Case section 8, case 8A. Motion to approve the application to have detention recalculated under Plan B for William Branish was made and seconded. Any discussion on this case? Hearing none, go to the roll. Brian,
Deny.
Charles.
Yeah.
Marcia,
Deny.
Nessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Isabel,
Deny.
Paul.
I deny.
Motion fails 0-7. We listen to old business, section 9, case 9A. A motion to approve the application for service-connected disability beyond the 1-year deadline for Mark Twine was made and seconded. Any discussion on 9A? Hearing none, go to the roll. Brian,
Deny.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
well,
Deny.
motion fails 0-7. 9B, a motion to approve the application for service-connected disability for Charles Battle was made and seconded. Any discussion on 9B? Hearing none. Brian, Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Isabel?
No.
Motion fails 0-7. Case 9C, a motion to approve the application for service-connected disability benefits for Kenneth Miller was made and seconded. Any discussion on 9C? Brian,
I'll abstain.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Isabel,
Abstain.
Paul.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-4 with 3 abstentions. Case 9D, a motion to approve the application for service-connected disability for George Sneed was made and seconded. Any discussion on 9D?
Jack, we tabled this last month. We requested Dr. Hayworth clarify her statement, which I want to read. He finds the George Schmidt permanently disabled working as a police officer, not due to the work injury, which was largely corrected by the surgery, but rather from degenerative disease that will continue to evolve over time. How can you say that the injury was almost corrected, but this person's good to go back to being a police officer? They're disabled or they're not. We asked for clarification, we didn't get it, we got a quick response that said, I can't clarify this any further. So the way that reads, this person is disabled from the injury, which was almost corrected by surgery. I know there's only one person in the room that's a police officer, but you can't be a police officer when you're almost corrected. You have to be healthy and fully functional. And her own words say that he's not, he's largely corrected. So I'd like to see us.
Brian. Is there any other discussion on case 9D? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I approve.
Charles,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Vanessa,
Deny.
Sherilyn,
deny,
Paul.
I approve.
The motion fails 3-4. Us into the new business and executive director.
Third party data breach for the people where they've been going, notices, and as you probably know, have gone out. The vast majority of the questions, by the way, have been rather than notices, the offer of credit monitoring are legitimate. That's 99.9% of the questions, which it is, and we some of the people out of cautions take advantage of it. So it's good work by the staff, good work by the board and the law department in choosing the method of notification and so appreciate that. We've also, had our first meeting of the data security task force, which is something that, we encourage other city agencies do is to look at the end user of all departmental payment, whether it be the unions using it for health benefits, whether it be treasurer's office using it to process payments, whether it be payroll, whether it be a third party vendor, whether it be a bank. We're working with the CIT folks to identify any possible vulnerabilities in that and to secure those vulnerabilities. So, that's going very well. We had our first meeting is third, next meeting is September 6th. So we'll keep you apprised on that. On the 22nd of August, Lika, Leonte, Stacy, Brad, and other folks, should we coordinate retirement seminars? We had 2 classes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and they went very well. We had hundreds of participants take advantage of that, and the pension information, health benefits, deferred comp were all reviewed on the very popular and, good job, Shanique, good job to Deontay, Brad, and everyone who participated in that. The hearing panels, just a quick note, I want to thank the trustees for your continued willingness to participate in the hearing panels. The appeals do continue to increase, so going forward, continue on participation is appreciated. So we are seeing increase in appeals, increase in drives, still like this. So it makes sense. It's we're spending this flexible because that's what we're doing. We'll be reaching out to participate. That's all right.
Any other new business for the board? Is this to the litigation summary?
I don't have any updates from now.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. Hearing no objections, motion carries unanimously, and we move into the deferred comp plan portion of our meeting.
They closed in 16 to 17. 16 to 17 to be both sides. 1,600 here, determined 16 to 17. And North 17th Street, 100 between Franklin and Reese.
I was just gonna ask.
And then they're gonna close March between Ward and 17. And
Carolyn, you're hearing
And then
everything?
18.
Everything's
Yes.
working?
Yes. Thank you. Thanks.
That's all that's around the streets to be able to come out of there. Labor difference on that between 10 to 2 today. Labor's having a crunch. About, they talk about.
Venus, you're small anyway. Right there. That's our, because I see what the granny was like, look at it.
I'm hearing that's from the march. But then there's also march of police officers. They're marching from, that's a separate one. They're marching from, City Hall to the DA's office, I think. Something that's. The labor one is that. That's a huge.
All right, are we ready to get started? First item in deferred comps is a motion to approve the minutes from our July meeting. Motion was made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll go to the roll. Brian. Lee? Marcia, approved. Vanessa, approved. Carolyn,
Approve.
Crystal,
Proof.
and Paul. Motion carries unanimously, moves on to item 2.
Cover the investment performance on mutual funds next, for the monthly activity, and such, alternative.
As of July 31st, the deferred compensation plan ending balance was $1,792,930,568.76. That's 1.8% increase over the month of June. Total participants that have an account balance continues to increase. It's 25,369. That's 62 more than the previous month of June. Actively deferring is 19,654. That's about 10 more than the month of June. New enrollments. 128 in the month of July. That's year to date, we have the highest number of new enrollments at 1,164. It's 2019. I just want to thank all the board trustees for your continued support, as well as the work that Brad and his team are doing to drive engagement in the plan. So thank you so much. Inactive participants is 5,715. That's 52 more than the previous month. Philadelphia Parking Authority, we have now 526 participants, 1 new enrollment in the month of July. Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation has 42 participants with 1 new enrollment in July. 401A plan, the ending balance in July was $2,448,800.69. That's 2% more than the previous month. There are 933 total participants in the plan. Call volume has decreased. We received in the month of July 3,262. That's about 224 less than the month of June. However, when we look at year to date, the call volume had people continue to leverage the call center, which is up by 10% over last year. The online accounts, this is where people, participants and employees are engaging with the tools and resources. 19,194 participants have an account balance, which is an increase of 143, or almost 75.7% of participants have an account. Percentage options continue to increase. Currently, there, as of July, 1,865 participants have percentage contribution option, which is an increase of about 33 more than the previous month. So when we look at the number of participants that are leveraging the percentage contribution, it is currently at 8%. The Roth, which is the after-tax contributions, there are 6,024 participants, which is an increase of 153 in the month of June. Here we have total assets as 45.2 million. And then when we look at the Roth, which is after-tax contributions, 31% of those participants that are contributing into the plan are contributing to the Roth. And again, it's mostly the younger folks that are joining and participating in the Roth. I'm happy to answer any questions. If not, I'm going to pass on to Brad to discuss the service activity.
It looks like year over year, we're planned, the assets under management are up $141 million.
Grown, new enrollments, also roll in transfer-ins. This is very important because outside assets, Brad and our senior retirement specialists engaging in conversations, reviewing asset allocation, and then the opportunity to bring outside assets, because this plan is a very cost-effective plan, thanks to the board trustees.
Yeah, Brian, so go through just to follow up the last 7 meetings. HTC, or the Department of Fire, and the issue of participation, substantial revenue being nationwide, and it's good.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. So for the month of July, the local service teams conducted 104 one-on-one individual consultations with 72 enrollments done by the local retirement specialists. 22 of those one-on-one consultations were used conducting the My Interactive Retirement Planning Tour. Then for the month of July, the local team conducted 60 workshops slash webinars. And total attendees for those webinars and workshops were 569 participants in those for the month of July. There are no questions. Thank you.
Could you, sorry. Do we know how many of those persons actually, maybe you have it down here, how many, I'm sorry, not fast enough. How many of those employees who actually participated actually enrolled?
Participating in the webinars?
Or not necessarily in the webinars, in the actual, workshops, not workshops, you know how they have
Do employer
employee
orientation.
orientation.
So we
Yes,
have,
I'm sorry.
there was about 143 attendees for new employee orientations.
Right,
125 of those were not enrolled in the plan at the time of,
okay.
and 47 of those enrolled at the new employee
That's
orientation.
excellent. That's almost 50%.
Yeah.
Well, not 50%, but it's very good though.
Yeah,
Oh,
now,
that's very good.
what we don't know, Marcia, is we don't know how many of them might have gone the next day, gone online, or.
Right.
This is just,
Uh-huh.
the retirement specialist is there, handing out the paper,
Excellent.
and the person filling it out is collecting.
Excellent. That is what we want to hear. Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, and I don't want to jump ahead. Read the last chapter. We're gonna hear a presentation shortly. Does that tool help track that next day person at all? So the one you just said, we can't track them tomorrow, the next day. I went, I didn't sign up, but tomorrow I may sit down and do it. But that tool helps that. And if so, maybe you talk about it during the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me? That's to item 3.
You'll have in front of you a report on the mutual fund performance through the second quarter of 2023. Just briefly, I mean, and we'll touch on this obviously during my CM as well, but there's still been over the course of the year, a fair amount of volatility due to various specific events globally and domestically, the debt ceiling that we breached, the banking crisis, inflation, et cetera. So what you see is 19 of the 24 funds ranked above median in the 3 or 5 year period. A little bit more of a struggle during when you look at just the 3 year period alone. But over the 5 year period, recently the was held up very well. In terms of recommendations, very similar to what you heard about the first quarter. Recommend Harbor remaining on watch. Performance has improved during the first half of the year. Mass Mutual, again, improving performance over the 1 and 3 years. American Europe Pacific, they have outperformed it for 1 and 5 year periods, but there is some underperformance more recently for 3 years. And then Fidelity Real Estate continue to keep a close eye on them as they reopen for periods. Again, no specific recommendations to replace termination funds from staff. I do know that that additional fund that we would approve index option as a complement to the recently added eligible fund will be available to participants in the year.
Chris, could you talk about the 2-year delay in the implementation of the law changes scheduled to be made?
Yeah, thanks to being Nationwide. They also sent some materials about this. So as part of past congressional legislation, there was a provision that I believe starting at the beginning of 2024, depending on your income levels, you were going to have to make out the use catch-up contributions we're gonna have to be drawn for after tax. There was a lot of debate, consternation from a lot of plan sponsors about not being able to do that as quickly as the government would like. And so the Treasury Department recently announced a administrative, I'll call it correction or rule that will delay that from taking place until 2026.
There's potentially harder, how much is the second quarter that staff was flagged that.
Yeah, we've kept them under a close eye only because of, I think if you go back or, look at the reports from last year, there were some pretty significant underperformance. And so if you look at them both short term, 1 quarter and 1 year, they were very good. They ranked 10%. 5 year, they're in the top 50%. 3-year numbers still a little bit concerning. But I know, it's a popular choice for the folks in 457. Just looking at it, close to 9% of the assets are the highest share of active funds. And, I think it's just because of the amount of assets in there as well as the past underperformance of the side, not having.
Any other questions on the floor? Does that send to the money market?
Yeah, just briefly, did you know we, keep the cash from participant fees, rebates, et cetera, interest earned in the Vanguard money market account. Balance as of close of June was just north of $155,000, with total income through the second quarter of just under $9,300. The only expense year to date was the annual audit of $27,000. Normally, as folks know, recommend the program and we still participants would get to around.
Questions on this item? I'm going to suspend to you at 5. Excellent. So just by way of introduction, my name is Amelia Dunlap. I lead the marketing and communications team here at Nationwide. Happy to be here with you all today. I think in your packets of information, you should have found one that says marketing updates. So I'll take you through some exciting changes that we're making to our participant engagement program, and would love to be able to answer any questions that you might have around some of the enhancements and changes that we've been making. On the first page, what you'll see here is really how we think about structuring our participant education and communication. And there's 2 layers that we are really focused on delivering. First is what we call custom marketing. That is what the city has today. These are the individual campaigns that we run on an annual basis. In fact, Brad and Bina are going to talk about some of those after I'm done today. And that will continue. That is based on some of the very specific needs and goals of the plan. Our opportunity here and some of the enhancements that we've made are to what we call our participant engagement program, or PEP for short. This is an always on proactive communication outreach that we are running. The data that we have, and I'll talk about the changes to the data. We're running that data behind the scenes to make sure that we're going to get the right message to the right participant at the right time. So Brian, your question was a nice setup to this, which is, as we think about the example that we just talked about, running a NEO orientation, one of the things that we're able to do with PEP is take the information of who all attended that meeting. And then if people aren't enrolling, we can set them on a series of communications afterwards to say, hey, let's follow up and try to take some action, and then be able to track those participants who are, maybe they weren't ready to sign up in the meeting, but keeping the message top of mind for them. So that's a great example of that kind of always on running in the background type of communication. If you go to the next page here, this will go over a little bit of how the participant engagement program works and ultimately what we're focused on measuring.
One of the things, we have the honor and the responsibility of storing the record keeping data for all of the participants in your plan. And so we're using that data to build out different segments and models around the participants here. So I'll give you an example of what we mean by this. One, common campaign you might run is to say, for young savers, we want to tell them to increase their contributions. And that might be a broad campaign that we would do as a part of our custom marketing. What PEP allows us to do is to say, well, that's not a one size fits all approach. Just because you're under the age of 35, you may have people who haven't even, gone in and set up their account yet, or you might have people who actually last month went in and increased their contribution. And so sending the same message to all of those people isn't nearly as effective. So what we're able to do here is build out all these kind of micro or sub segments of the participants based on what we know about them, their behaviors, how they interact online. The way that shows up is going to be through email. And again, you guys have such a high volume of online and activated accounts that you've got a lot of emails, which is really excellent. We can also do this through direct mail and display media. So think the banners and ads that show up when you're online. And by doing this, we're really focused on driving the right retirement behaviors. So some of the key metrics that Nina mentioned earlier are absolutely what we're trying to drive to. Having a conversation with whether it's someone on Brad's team or our retirement resource group, increasing contributions, getting people to roll in outside dollars, getting people to enroll in their account. Those are all the right behaviors that we want to drive for retirement readiness. And that's what we're focused on delivering here. So if you go to the next slide, this will show a little bit of what this looks like in practice. There's a number of different touch points that we are pushing to participants based on how they engage with us. So we have a monthly, what we call a dynamic email. Think of this as similar to a newsletter, but it's going to be customized for each person and based on kind of where they are in their life stages. We have targeted emails that we will send, and that's based on the propensity model of what we think might be the next best action to take. And then there's triggered emails, which are based on a participant's behavior. So think about this as a really good example is if someone goes online, they might log into their account, they might go into their interactive retirement planner and model out a contribution increase, but then they don't take it. This is where we will follow up with them and say, hey, you were starting something really great. Let's continue on that action. I liken this to what we all see a lot of times in the retail world. If you put something in your cart and you step away from it online, you're probably going to get some reminders to follow up and complete that sale. We use that same model, and it's all for the purpose of driving the right retirement behaviors. Based on how people engage with us there, we will then go through a series of kind of journey emails. And so that means if you engage with us in one, then we're going to keep engaging with you. If you don't engage with us, we're going to take you out of that population and say, hey, that probably wasn't the right message, and revisit back on some of that segmentation. One of the questions we get a lot around this is when you see all of these different touch points on one slide, people say that feels like a lot. And so what I want to impress on this group is that these are all the possible communications. It's not that every participant is going to get all of these. In fact, we average around about 2 communications per month per participant. So one of those being the dynamic, that newsletter email, and then the other could be a triggered or a targeted. And again, if people aren't engaging with us in this way, one of the really powerful things about our program is that we can start to, within the database, flag those people and say, hey, this person isn't engaging in email, but Brad and his team might be able to see that this is a person who, we might need to do more individual outreach to, because that's not someone who's engaging online. So the important part about this, I know that this has been a topic for the city before, and I'd like to go to the next slide, which I realize looks a little bit more like a IT diagram than what I usually get to present as the marketing leader. But this is an important change that we have made and implemented this year, which is to the database that fuels this program. On the left-hand side of the slide, what you'll see is that previously we worked with an external partner, a vendor, Merkle, and they actually housed this participant data for us. They were running and building all of the models and segmentation, all of the rules, managing the database, and then that is really what, like I said, it kind of fuels and feeds all of the different touch points. At the beginning of this year, in January of 23, we successfully migrated that database inside Nationwide. So this is now a nationwide owned and run database. Our team internally is managing the security, the monitoring, the access, and the business rules. By business rules, what that means is that if we have a plan, for example, that has adopted our managed accounts, they might get messages around that versus a plan who hasn't, right? So we're making some of those distinctions. If we have a plan that has 401A, right, some of those kind of plan dynamics. We are still engaged with Merkle as a partner. They are really valuable to us to help us execute on what we call the campaign rules and the segmentation model. And so what that means is the exact example that I just spoke about earlier, where we would say, hey, if we have distributed these communications and after 2 touch points, someone hasn't engaged with us, then we're going to stop, right? That is a campaign rule that we would build and set. And we're looking at those on a regular basis and making changes to them based on the type of interaction that we see. So Merkle is still helping us to manage those campaign rules.
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you,
No,
but
please.
so does Nationwide bring in all of the data security compliance and other things back inside to enhance our security?
Yes, I mean, that's our, I say that emphatically because we have a lot of strength and confidence in our security. And again, it is something that all of the databases following the Nationwide protocols, the monitoring, the protection, all of the same that we would for our record keeping platforms or any of the other security and the other databases that we manage.
So hopefully this will lessen the number of security breaches.
I mean, hopefully we don't have any, but yes, the intent is that, and again, this is now under our monitoring, so it gives us the confidence to be able, and really the accountability to make sure that we're managing the database to our standards and not managing a vendor to the standards that we would want them to uphold.
Thank you.
Were the problems that with our security task force that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So, would it be possible for Brad or someone to provide a contact person for our IT experts to talk with, certainly with that protocols, the president to do.
Absolutely, we have, I can work with Brad on that, but one of our IT leaders at Nationwide, be happy to put them in touch with the task force that you mentioned. So one last piece I'll hit on here, and then happy to take any other questions. And I realize this is kind of where the some of the details on security do come in. So if you go to the last page here on 6, wanted to highlight a few key provisions that we've put in place. So as I mentioned, we are still continuing our partnership with Merkle, and from an access and security. Merkle does have access to this database, and they do that through what we call a virtual desktop. So essentially, we have made them contractors to Nationwide. They have Nationwide login. We can monitor all of their activity and behavior, and they're kind of logging in through this virtual desktop. We as Nationwide manage the access and the rules of what they can have access to. I think about this very similarly to what you might see with an auditor. In terms of giving them secure access to be able to run some of the audits. We have also put a number of monitoring protocol in place, which you'll see in the second column here. I'll highlight a few key points here, which is anyone who has access to this database cannot get into email. They cannot download in mass any kind of files. We have alerts set so that if there's any kind of behavior happening that falls outside of those that they are, scheduled to do, we're going to get an alert and be able to go in and monitor that behavior. And then to your question earlier, Vanessa, this is the, all of the databases maintained by Nationwide resources, and our security, our attack and penetration teams are running up against that on a regular basis. And then finally, we do, because they are a vendor and we continue to work with them, we are still holding them to our standards for vendor security practices, even though they don't house the database anymore. They do still go through the due diligence process that we have from a vendor management perspective. So we're excited about this change because it gives us an opportunity for plans like the city of Philadelphia to hopefully be able to adopt the program. And that once we can get our plans to adopt the program, it gives us a really great opportunity to drive that proactive education and the right behaviors that we want to see from our employees in terms of getting them better prepared to live and retire. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about the program or the changes that we've made.
You mentioned it being a high volume of online accounts.
Mhm.
Is that compared to other public pension funds or just other funds that you work with?
Other plans.
Curious to know that.
Yeah,
So, in comparison to, I can't speak nationally, but I know from the cases, it is a very, our objective is get close to at least 80%. So continuously increasing the online account has been one of our primary goals. And here at City of Philadelphia, it seems to be a really, folks are engaged to set up their online account, leverage the tools and resources. Even, it was indicative in the virtual courtyard experience that we launched, that people were engaged in that, which was, quite, I think, phenomenal, considering it was the first time we had done something like that. It's really,
I agree with you, it's a great idea.
it's a high number.
I was just very specifically asking about high volume.
yeah.
Do we actually have a high volume?
We do,
Yeah. And we could, to Venus' point, happy to follow up and give you kind of a national comparison. Obviously, Vena has a large region here, but I can tell you across, some of our large city and state plans, the 80% level is very high. Get you more specifics on how that compares.
And just one other thing, it's really, it's compliments the board and to the nationwide secondarily on the decision that was made previously to question the outside use of it. When this was first presented to them 30 years ago, being in Jeff Hill, this board did a great job. Chris, really, on due diligence, on research and work on, and bringing up questions about it. The fact that Nationwide has brought that in-house, I think is a compliment to the fact that you listened to us and or other clients who may have brought up those issues. So compliment on that, but I'm not with the story, but also the fact that question.
Absolutely, and I think it is, to your point on, you were ahead of the time on your, diligence there. And again, thankfully, we haven't had any issues, but the opportunity, it took us about 2 years to migrate that database internally. We started at the beginning of 2021 and finished that earlier this year. But to your point, it's given us an opportunity to go to all of our plans that had previously had concerns there and get them to adopt the program as well.
We appreciate that. It's personal to see it's going ahead.
Know where the puck is going and how it is. And again, I mean, the prominence of data security over the last handful of years has become the #1 topic. And
As we
so,
well know.
right. Absolutely.
I have to ask a real quick question. I think it kind of dovetails with Fran's questions on security. How much of the personalization targeted experience is driven by artificial intelligence or kind of technology as opposed to human oversight or interaction?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Chris. I would say, historically, a lot of our personalization and our segmentation was built by, right, the kind of human analysis, right? So, hey, we could say someone who's in this cohort and have taken this action falls into this segment. I will tell you, just earlier this year, we implemented our first model. Again, we built it nationwide, that's using artificial intelligence to identify participants who are likely to roll out of the plan and get in front of those participants and for proactive retention measures. And so we just started executing that campaign earlier this year. And then as we, again, it's predictive in nature. And so one of the things that we'll do over the course of the next several months is continue to monitor. And again, the model, the artificial intelligence behind the scene will take the results every month and say, did we get it right? And if so, then that feeds the model to get smarter. And if we got it wrong, then the model is going to change some of the criteria. So that's one of the first areas where we've started to use artificial intelligence, and I think there's tons of opportunity here. Because again, when you think about it, the beauty of artificial intelligence is that it can process a significant amount of data very quickly and be able to kind of get smarter over time, which is exactly what to be doing. So we're on the journey there, but really only one of our models is built on AI.
We don't, Brian knows this, we don't want to see people throwing money out, like,
Right.
the AI is helpful now, but there are other things that will be helpful. Jeff, you know what, from fucking tickets, we will talk about that at the border, we will talk about that. You know,
Question, I like this too. Workforce is getting younger, this is the way they move, but push marketing can get aggressive and you don't need to, is there a way to opt out if they want to opt out? That's it.
That's it. Yep, there's a unsubscribe in every communication that we send, and if they unsubscribe, they'll be out. They will only receive kind of operational communications for required. I will tell you that our unsubscribe rate is less than 0.5%, so it's pretty low, but there is that option. Now, then it's a matter of, like I said, just making sure we get the operational communications.
That's all.
Yeah.
It's good tool. It's nice.
Just long term, one of the things probably we want to keep in mind and monitor is the number of people that do unsubscribe and what groups they fall into from an age range perspective. So if we can understand the reasons why they're unsubscribing and what we need to do differently to approach those particular employee groups. Because that's the other thing. We don't want to get to a point where we're suddenly looking up and saying 5% of our employees are unsubscribing. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
And what does that tell us?
Right, so good insight, this, I love that. One piece I didn't mention here, but if the city chooses to adopt the program, another piece will be on a quarterly basis. You'll get a customized report. We talked about this in the subcommittee meeting, which is each of the segments and how they are responding to not just unsubscribe, but how many are taking action, how many are rolling in and enrolling in the plan, increasing contributions. And so that will be kind of a new asset that Ina and Brad will be able to bring on a quarterly basis. And then from there, we can make adjustments based on where we're seeing some trends and participant behavior.
The other thing that someone brought up was our behavior, our behavior based upon your book of business, but that's important too. How are we comparing? Yes, how do we compare based upon the book of business?
Yeah, and that's part of that customized report. You get the compared to the entire book and then compared to kind of our top 15 largest plans.
And also compared to other governmental agencies, because sometimes we want to separate that out from the largest plans.
Yes.
Because there is a comparison.
Yeah.
With our governments.
Yeah, I will tell you all of our top largest plans.
Our government. Okay, yeah, makes sense.
It's a nice halo.
That makes sense.
Thank you for the opportunity to share some of the changes and enhancements, and happy to connect in with your security task force, and if there's any other follow-up. What's the labor round?
Thought you guys hired me.
And this is the point where the time participation or like access. Marketing. Oh, yeah, sorry. The next book.
Yeah, very good. This is based on the trustees' ask. We put together several marketing initiatives. This was around the conversation from previous board meetings. The first one is the risk on page 2, which is the risk tolerance review campaign. There's a large number, about 691 million of assets are in the fixed. Large concentration of employees have a portion or 100% of their assets exposed to the fixed account. One of the asks from the trustees board meeting was, can we look at those that are 100% concentrated, invested in the fixed account? How can we reach out to those individuals and encourage them to diversify, review their account, and of course, also meet with the retirement specialist. So we did two tactics. The first one that you see will be customized for mid-career, and we're gonna send out an email to those individuals, as well as for those that we do not have an email account, we will send them a postcard. So the objective here is to make sure that they review their account and the potential to grow their assets and diversify out of them, or at least review the fixed account penetration. The second tactic is the late career. So there's a different message for those that are nearing retirement. As you know, when we looked at the demographic population, there's a lot of folks that are 60 and over that have their accounts and they're fixed, but they do need to protect their assets. So there's a different message. Based on our record, we have 94% of participants' email addresses. So this is very good, but we still have a 6% that don't provide, or we don't have the email. So we have two approaches, one for email outreach, and then the second one is a postcard. So we're ready to go, but wanted to make sure the subcommittee had their review with staff and then with board trustees to provide us your approval. If we have your approval, this particular campaign would be implemented in September. And it's only going out to the subset of those folks that are 100% invested in their full percentage account or their 401. Any questions? Yeah. And the second campaign is something I believe, Brian, you had asked us many board meetings ago, the importance of encouraging folks to review the value of percentage contribution campaign. As I shared earlier, 8% of participants have elected to do a percentage contribution. So we still have an opportunity for 92% of those folks that they're all on dollar basis. So we have a few tactics. And why is this important? One, percentage contribution captures, if you have a raise and increase, it automatically gets captured without somebody going in and doing it on their own. The second is for more dollars that are being added on, the compounding value. So they're going to save more, and of course, less stress to just focus on the fact, the time is of importance, so it's automatically adjusted. So we have a few tactics. The first one is, this is for everybody, especially concentrating on those that are in a dollar basis. But when they go on the website, online account, as I shared earlier, majority have an online account. When they go on, there's a web banner. So you see the web banner, pick the image on the bottom. Then they will, if they click on the web banner, they'll see the page where they can click on learn more. And then the second page on the web, it directs them to see the difference, so they can compare. If you're currently on a dollar basis, what does it translate to on a percentage basis? And it shares with you the compounding aspect and this calculation tool. So it's an excellent campaign. It's going to be year round. Once the board trustees approve it, we can implement this, but it's going to a wide audience versus the 100% fixed campaign. Happy to answer any questions. If not, I'm going to pass on to Brad to discuss the ongoing campaigns that we have been doing. Brad?
Thanks, Peter. So the first is the Plan 10 and 16 enrollment outreach. This is a campaign that we did in 2021, and we plan to bring it back in the fall of this year. This is just a reach out to everybody that is in Plan 10 or Plan 16 that is eligible to receive a matching contribution and is not. So you'll see the title of it and get your match. So it's just those folks that's done by email and postcard as well. And then the last campaign is the approaching retirement, ready to retire flyer. This is a flyer distributed to HR folks and different unions, just telling folks what the kind of the process is for retiring with their 457 account, that they can contribute terminal leave, roll drop money over, contact a retirement specialist or our CFP to go over their options.
Brad, do we know how many people are in Plan 16 or eligible to receive a match but not receiving one?
We would not know that yet.
Okay.
That information, the data set to send that we would receive that from Philly telling us people that are in Plan 16, that on July 1st, their salary was over 65,000.
Okay.
So we don't know those numbers without receiving that data yet.
Oh, okay, so once you have that data, then you'll be able to share that with us?
Absolutely.
Okay, do you think you'll have it for next month? Because that's very interesting to understand how many people are eligible for Plan 16, but aren't engaged in the 457 plan, and what that looks like. Because that will tell us, you know, the list that we need to do in terms of getting those folks engaged.
Absolutely. I'll certainly make the
Okay,
request
great.
today. We will have it, I've been told. Steve, tells me we will have it.
Just to be clear, because we're gonna discuss it both. This marketing plan is completely separate from that.
In addition to,
Yes.
It's that inner circle and then that's sort of that outer circle. So this is the piece that you already have. That's right. Here inside. The one point, this came up in the subcommittee and just because we were talking about Plan 10 and 16, I think that would be a really interesting opportunity for us to think about. You know, if the board chooses to adopt that could be one that we could start to move into a kind of always on campaign so that as soon as we're getting the files on who are the newly eligible, we're starting to get some of that outreach. So we'd have to do a little bit of development to get there, but it sounds like a really good opportunity to just kind of always have that running in the background versus the manual effort today.
Any discussion from the board or?
So I'll make a motion to approve marketing plan. Perhaps, I guess I'll word it as the marketing plan to approve, but we might go ahead with that. I think that.
I'll second.
Motion has been made to approve the marketing campaign. It was properly seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, for the roll, Brian,
I approve.
Leach. Marcia, approved. Vanessa, approved. Sherilyn,
Approve.
Roosevelt,
Approved.
and Paul. Approved. Motion carries unanimously.
I make a motion on that vote, can we table that for 30 days? Carol, this was a big topic 2 years ago. Merkel, we all remember that. Carol's on the subcommittee, Carol's budget chair. I'd like her to be here. I'd like to hear her opinion before we move ahead. If we could table that decision for 30 days.
Sorry, a second.
Second.
Motion to table the top discussion for 30 days is made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll roll. Brian, Blake, Vanessa, Marcia, Sherilyn,
Approve.
and Paul. Motion carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn for Tom has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, for adjourned. And I wanted to ask the board members like a brief break. Or do you want to move right into?
We got a request for a break.
All right. Take a 5-minute break. You guys okay?
I'll just.
Everybody ready? We'll go. Stand. Ready?
Okay, we call this session of the investment committee in order. First item is the drum line. Everybody like that? Approval of July 26 minutes. Your motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I will call the roll. Paul. Ryan. Isabel.
Approve.
I know, I did a different order, Paul.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out alphabetical soon, complicated from. Yes, sir. Marcia. Lee.
Approved.
Carrie. Oh, Sherilyn, sorry.
Approved.
Motion carries. Agenda item 2 is the annual asset allocation review.
Just briefly, and as you folks know, this is an exercise that we're staff and Marquette engage in on an annual basis. I want to note that as in past years, I think there's largely flowing amongst staff at Marquette about the recommendations and suggestions, but I do think that there's, you know, some discussions that will likely carry into next month, continue to discuss with Marquette. Things such as best mix of real estate and infrastructure with open-ended core versus closed-ended value add opportunities. And with that, you know, kind of the fees, you know, both positive and negative. Also related to that, you know, thoughts are, you know, are we market timing, which we don't want to do, but we also want to improve make certain investments. And then just a couple other things, how we are accounting for cash as part of the asset allocation. And the asset allocation mixes that were provided being about 35 to 50 basis points worth from these units. I know Marquette will speak to that there, you may feel there's some good reasons for that. But you know, we'd also like to continue discussing them if there's opportunities. Take a little bit of risk off the table as so with that, you know, I'll be happy to answer questions during, after the presentation, but I'm going to turn this part of it.
Okay, great. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And we have quite a few exhibits to work on, but I think the easiest place to start with is the executive summary. So the asset allocation review, it's under the green tab under exhibit 2. And it's actually titled asset allocation review, the one page. Okay. So I think what we'll do here is, again, just walk through some high level, takeaways. Some of the comments will echo, what Chris just mentioned, particularly, these can be discussed with the leader as well. You know, to.
Wait, everyone's finding it, including chairman, second, and everybody there? Well, let's say everyone there, great. I was the slowest one, so I said, hold on, everyone was there.
Okay, so we are on the page titled rationale for today's review. And again, the goal here is to not necessarily rubber stamp or proof statement, anything, but really just confirm the direction of where things have been moving with the asset allocation. As we know, in asset allocation, it's essentially your GPS or your roadmap for your return stream. It'll tell you when to turn left, when to turn right. Chris told me to throw in the consultant analogy, so that was the GPS right there. But as we think about.
Or maybe a sports analogy.
I can only be premiership. But as we go through page 2 really quickly, the goal here is to review the performance and the asset allocation portfolio. Ultimately, one of the takeaways we had back in 2016 after the in-depth discussions with staff and the board and really formulating, you know, in our minds, the appropriate asset allocation. The goal here was really to minimize the surprise effect or having a portfolio that looks very good academically, but then in real life, practical settings, didn't really deliver on the promises that we framework, you know, bullet point 3, to Chris's point, we're not recommending, changes to the asset allocation with respect to the building blocks. The proportionality, that we have under, the target weights, plus minus 5%, allows us to be a little bit overweight and underweight with respect to certain risky asset classes. So I guess reading the tea leaves, one of the things we plan on doing, between now and the next meeting is running some additional mixes. Those additional mixes, perhaps taking fixed income a little bit up, bringing actually a little bit down. And then, to Chris's point earlier, as we continue the discussion with staff regarding especially, real estate, just making sure that, we're all having with respect to what is going to be presented, from the real estate fund. But the key takeaway here is we're not looking at wholesale changes to the portfolio. And as we'll see in a few moments, the program had really worked, in our opinion, I believe, and staff and the boards of with respect to providing downside protection when the market sold off, anticipating a rebound, when the market has rebounded. So on page 5 of the same document, pages 4 and 5, 4 is just a quick snapshot of the changes made back in 2016. So certain asset classes, NLPs, master limited partnerships, a really good example of something that was perhaps academically appealing, but in real life, that ended up being somewhat of a volatile and inappropriate asset class for us to be in. So page 4 just gives an example of that. Page 5 is just, in our opinion, a proof statement of returns in the portfolio. When we think about returns through the end of June 2016, we had a return stream where there was a significant amount of tracking error relative to the index. And again, one of the frustrations that we heard very clearly was the fact that the portfolio had a lot of moving pieces, but those moving pieces failed to protect the downside and failed to participate in market rallies. So page 5, the return summary through June 30th, 2023, I think gives a good snapshot of things changing with respect to tracking error and then participation on the outside as well. So we just fast forward for a couple of the exhibits, really through to exhibit 18. And 18 provides some performance attribution. Again, when we think about 2022, that was definitely a challenging year. Equities and fixed income were both in bear markets. So we did see within the portfolio a pretty nice stream of downside protection. The overall composite for the portfolio was down 11.2%, but the broader market, specifically segments of the market, were down close to 20% over that same period. So that's really a nice proof statement with respect to that downside protection that we just mentioned. On page 19, and we're starting to enter discussion around asset classes, sub-asset classes. Page 19, the goal here is to point to 2022. So still a very tough year. The market sold off. We're having discussions around real estate and staff. Real estate, particularly the UBS portfolio, has been under very close watch, given the fact that there are redemptions taking place in the portfolio, and UBS is still looking to essentially right size some of the assets that hadn't performed in the portfolio. With that being said, open-end real estate was a strong performing asset class for us in 2022, in spite of the challenges I just mentioned with UBS.
And one question about that, when we would look at this, you really want to look longer term, right? You're just trying to make a point about what the last year looked like, but a particular market for 9 months isn't what we really look at to make decisions, right?
That is correct. And in fact, page 23 provides the, I guess, the balanced view of everything. So 23 just gives us that perspective of, okay, within asset allocation, an asset class can do really well, but an asset class can also perform poorly in any given environment. So on page 23, we see that that same asset class that we just mentioned, that was the savior of the portfolio for calendar year 2022, it's actually down in 2023. So the takeaway here is real estate, it's a long-term lens that we have. That long-term lens acknowledges that there will be periods of outperformance like 2022, and there'll be periods of underperformance like what we're doing with credit. So that's the real takeaway from those particular slides. And that tells nicely that long-term.
But I think it's interesting that those two slides actually overlap and keep them time also, right? Because calendar 22,
Yes.
and the fiscal 23. So
Yes,
it's like a very short amount of time.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So it's really just, again, to show that, asset classes can behave in, many different ways, over the short term, but over the long term, it's really our view of the asset class that informs, the role in the portfolio versus any, what we call short-term noise. Dave, for that, I will,
Like, what would we define as long term? What would you define as long term? For example, for real estate.
real estate, absolutely anything encroaching that 10-year mark, is long term. But even 6+ years in this market environment, I think it's reasonable enough to say 6+ years is moving on to, a cycle or the formation of a cycle. So
Yes, you get John. They don't really net of fees, annualized performance, and the regular investment. It's, well, it's on 49% since June of 2017. Say that's satisfactory or is that long term or just shy of long term or?
So the inception date for UBS one. So for UBS, we have an inception date.
January 2017.
January 2017, thank you. So,
The charge like 49%.
yeah, so,
5.8%.
yeah, so
That's kind of what I'm getting.
absolutely with UBS, it has been disappointing. Those results have been disappointing. The treatment that they have with respect to the leverage, being in Class A properties, being in, well occupied, highly dense, areas of the country. That thesis wasn't wrong for UBS. It was really the allocation, that they had in the portfolio. So being overweight on the retail side of things, and being a little slower to bring down retail exposure is really what caught them. And absolutely, the returns and the performance has been disappointing. The balance out has been Clarion. So thankfully, there is the flip side of that. It goes back to the notion of diversification, having a contingency plan or a backup plan, just to make sure that if things don't go as anticipated, it does cushion the fall. So while the performance for UBS has absolutely been disappointing, the overall performance for the deposit has been good, and Clarion has really carried, the weight of the performance of that deposit over that historical period.
You mentioned Class A, and here in Dave's take on this, because I do a lot of reading when you hear about, well, Class A office buildings are doing well, and doing better, let's say, than the other office buildings. However, for example, year-to-date returns for UBS for Class A, that's really low, -10%. So where are the Class A offices doing better? Why are UBS? Or is that information that we've been reading and we've seen? It's absolutely that all the artists are noticing.
Absolutely.
Class A is doing well, they're attracting people, they're retaining people, the rest of the office are working hard, so where's the disconnect? Let's say UBS and everything.
Yeah, I mean, think about Class A properties, there's still a high demand for that sort of asset class. There is a limited supply, and there's a very high supply of sort of everything else. And I think when we look at UBS's track record, our experience has been X number of years. Their track record is much, much longer. For a very long time, they were one of the best managers in the space. When we think about real estate just in general, these are large properties that do have some level of visibility, some level of transparency, and there is liquidity. It's just the transactions take much longer to execute. And you compare that to closed end is going to be even much longer than what we see in this space. So there's a limited amount of transaction volume that we're experiencing just in the real estate space in general. So we just want to keep that in mind, coming back to the point around year-over-year performance. Really, the intent of that slide is to demonstrate the impact of low or negative correlation. And we experienced the same phenomenon following the global financial crisis. Equity markets tanked in 2008 and then recovered in 2009. And over that same time period, real estate continued to perform well. That was the support of the ballast. And of course, equity markets dislocated, or improved, and real estate dislocated. So we're experiencing the same sort of phenomenon. If we had that same chart where everything dropped, that creates a problem here. By adding allocation with low or negative correlation, you're supporting or minimizing volatility. So for a long-term time horizon, where we have one in this portfolio, UBS has even a longer one throughout their entire management experience.
Yeah, in theory, no, I agree, in theory, lower cost, which is a good thing for asset allocation, unless the paradigm is shifted. Right, and that's kind of what we've talked about in terms of real estate, as the paradigm shifts with remote work and hybrid work, and that's it. None of us, I don't really have a crystal ball, I don't really know the answer to that, but that's generally thinking and feedback on it. And leverage is important, because we just saw that, West Palm Beach did a full redemption on $21 million on the JP Morgan open-ended real estate fund. We're getting close in, I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying that's an open-ended, right? Some of the reasons they gave were, low default, sizable office assets, unfavorable debt profile, so I understand the points of leverage, or reduced leverage with EBS. So the performance hasn't really been there despite those positive underlying investments. That's a concern, that's a bit of paradigm shift, and, like you mentioned ballast, Dave, and that's a good word, because we saw that fixed income traditionally had been a ballast for certain things, until it wasn't, right, for several years, now it's making a bit of a comeback, so it all does go in cycles, and I'm not talking about market time, but just in general, something's balanced until it's not, the money is less paradigm. So we're just asking feedback, best guess, best estimate as to where the market may go, the new real estate market, I'll call it for lack.
Yeah, so with the newer trends in the real estate market, the Class A's, when you think about the major cities, the major metropolitan areas, if you think about, I won't say the company, but, some of the larger companies, tech companies, being the tenants in these buildings, you think about Class A still having that resilience across the market cycle, where we do expect to see more volatility and uncertainty. And again, this is just higher level, because Class A naturally is going to be more conservative, right? Higher occupancies, longer leases, you're looking at stronger credit ratings for the tenants and so on. Once you start going down to B, C, and so on, that's where you do see more the volatility. So we still believe that from a asset class standpoint, Class A makes a significant amount of sense. And when we talk about Class A, that's the open end space. Secondarily, when we think about sectors in real estate and the rotations within the sectors, there's been a strong rotation away from office, as you correctly noted. It's still uncertain with respect to what the new normal looks like. Office spaces, maybe a combination of, the WeWorks model, where there's a little bit more, living where you work. And I'll completely date myself, Gen Z. I now realize I don't understand how a lot of people think. So there's things I wouldn't do, but there are things that seem very appealing on the real estate side. Industrial continues to be very appealing from a valuation sector standpoint. Multifamily, particularly the Class A side, continues to be very appealing. So office is the one area. Retail has bounced back considerably, and I think that's a good example where during COVID, looking at retail and the potential death of the retail segment, that has since bounced back significantly. So again, we continue to view real estate generally as a great asset class to be in. We still consider the Class A as the place that had good ballast. But with that being said, there is a rotation taking place right now. And UBS is a really good example of that.
Some of the flagship Nordstrom's in San Francisco close.
Yes.
No, but it's Class A, it's not limited, it's alts.
No, Class A is just the type of,
So how flexible are they moving to other areas?
So part of what we're experiencing here is an example of market efficiency. When you have a liquid market with buyers and sellers, there is very identifiable price discovery. If I know that I'm going to sell an asset for X and there's a buyer who will buy it at that same price, we have price discovery. And that's the way that liquid financial markets operate all the time. Real estate still operates in a very liquid market, especially with these asset sizes. But because there's so much uncertainty around Office space, not so much in retail, not so much in industrial, we have fewer buyers and sellers. And buyers and sellers gap out their bid ask spread, so it becomes very difficult to understand what it was worth because we're not seeing the transaction. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest the value of office space is declined. There's just a gap in the bid ask spread because we don't have adequate buyers and sellers because of uncertainty. At some point, especially with Class A properties, we will probably see a tightening or improved efficiency or better price discovery, elevating the overall prices of assets, and those assets will transact, giving us a market price.
Do you think Wall Street Journal had some sales yesterday? Considerably less than. Considerably, it's almost 50% off. Is that going to affect the market price down? I mean, at some point, whether you sell it or not, you're gonna have to adjust your mark to market.
Right.
And then therefore, the investment is not as valuable as it would otherwise be. I mean, that mark to market with hedge funds, with private equity, it's always a,
That is very.
okay.
The other point is, this is observable in most metropolitan areas where tenants are leaving older buildings and moving into newer Class A buildings, not necessarily because of new tenant demand, but because better office space is available, and that is creating a dislocation in the older property types. There is plenty of Class A buildings. Here's one of the more interesting statistics that I've heard in our discussions with investment managers. There are over 600,000 office buildings in the United States, 70% of which were built prior to 1990. Those offices built prior to 1990 are not designed to accommodate the needs of today's workforce. We're not owners, you're not owners of that type of property, but that just is emblematic. This properties, we are seeing transaction. It's the exodus from these older properties that's causing downward pressure in the overall assets.
And on the theme of transaction, while it was for different reasons, we saw a big dislocation in 2008. And I think 2008, again, different reasons for 2008 happening versus UBS. But if we think about discussions around real estate, then valuations were down significantly. Supply was in excess of the demand out there. So things were marked down, absolutely. But at the same time, certain assets, in our opinion, there is a true fundamental value to them and holding them over the long term. And even if over the short term, there are pretty meaningful price fluctuations, if the overall thesis around a particular building or a particular segment of the market still holds true, and I'll give industrial or multifamily as examples of that, it kind of balances out some of the short-term developments happening today to fast forward to, okay, going forward, do we expect the economy to be growing? If the answer is yes, okay, industrial probably makes sense. If industrial makes sense, valuations at the right level, or they perhaps a little bit below what they need to be right now. So that type of thinking around the real estate market presently does point to, yes, there are absolutely short-term gains to be made from the dislocation happening right now. But the longer-term gains, when things do rebound, and the mean reversion that occurs in many of the asset classes we have exposure to, we still are believers that is, where open-end real estate is positioned.
It all makes sense, except that there are structural changes, and it's not a simple thing, and something that's fundamentally different for the long term.
Yes, absolutely. And as those changes do happen, the other argument would be, if you think about who can capitalize the most from any type of seismic change, well, the modest change in the market is typically those that have the biggest position, the biggest advantage, and the biggest deal network. So again, when we think about things changing, and let's say, for example, workforces are more lead or green conscious, it is actually the open-end funds that have led the investments, because they can physically write bigger checks, make bigger investments in those types of technology or those types of buildings. So, more to come, obviously, as we have discussions with staff around this, but ashamedly, yes, we do believe that real estate is going through a tough time presently, but that tough time presently doesn't, in our opinion, warrant move away from the asset class or the open-end nature of the asset class, because again, we've seen this happen before, either principal or prudential I think a really good example is of, the principal of Prudential in 2008. If you go back and look at the historical performance, DWS, in fact, is another good example, Deutsche Bank. These were funds that went through, UBS style performance in 2008. Lessons were learned, adjustments were made in the portfolio, and you don't even see the impact of 2008 in those historical numbers now, those managers. So again, those data points, that historical perspective, again, gives us a little bit more conviction around open, and particularly when we think about the longer term horizon.
I don't mean to belabor, but it's something that we've all been discussing internally about this thing. And moving away from real estate versus possible new communities or two different things.
Yeah.
But you would agree that new communities require not only rural due diligence, but additional extreme caution at this.
Absolutely.
Before making any commitment.
Absolutely, and we absolutely agree with that.
Right, yes, okay, so I think you are on the same page.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So really, page 20, I know we've come through a lot of points, so page 20 really, I think the takeaway here is, again, today's point around the asset allocation and diversification. We saw in 2022, certain asset classes performed exceptionally well, but over the fiscal year period, we're probably looking at a slightly different return stream on those segments, especially the longevity. So page 21 points to the fiscal year performance. Fiscal year performance came in at 7.64, so higher than the target rate of return. So a nice result to see there. And then as we look at page 22 and 23, again, this continues the conversation around diversification and the difference in performance across the various asset classes. Page 25, one of the things that we are continually discussing with staff as well as the board is just the fee efficiency of the program and the portfolio. We've been able to execute a pretty effective portfolio that's highly liquid, still has pockets of good private market exposure, particularly on the equity side of things. But all in all, these are highly competitive, just given some of the exposures we have within the portfolio.
Just explain what that 0.4 represents, because that's higher than where we ended the prior year, right? And that's not representing in actual, and it's not where we think we'll wind up, right? So can you just walk through that so that it's kind of clear what we're reflecting here, where we think our fees actually were for fiscal 23?
Yeah, so these are estimated returns when all the estimated fees when all is said and done. The truest, the fee, the actual fee is actually closer to 32 basis points, I want to say.
So what's the difference between that 32 and this? What is it that is reflected in the 32 that's not reflected here?
Just estimated asset sizes, estimations over how much we had across the various asset classes over that reporting period. So it's really just a reconciliation of those numbers as we finalize those numbers and get through to the actual real numbers being applied to the fees.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm getting at is I think that's overstating our expense ratio.
Yes, it's a very conservative look at the fees being paid.
The problem is sometimes people take this information and don't look at it as a conservative estimation and say, look what the future board's expenses are. Name a few. So, it'd be really good if this page actually reflected the lower fees that we think are reasonable or more accurate, so that we're telling the world what our fees actually are.
Yeah, so I believe going forward, our team has been speaking with Chris and we'll have additional disclaimers and footnotes in place. And we'll tweak how we report that, just to make sure that no one skips past the part that's estimated and.
Yes.
I do have a suggestion. So we do see a footnote at the bottom, it says 0.32 and then 0.30, it's attached to consideration. That's the way it should came out. However, could we add another line here, since actual FY fees 0.30? We pass it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that would be helpful. We were a public pension. have to make sure people are clear as to what our fees are and not guessing as to what our fees are. I understand that part of the asset allocation is looking forward, right? It's not prognostication, but I can't tell you last time our fees were 0.40. I mean, it's 0.30, 0.32, 0.3. At least the last 3 fiscal years, they have been that, maybe a little longer. So I think the estimate is probably bad estimate, right? No disrespect.
No,
So,
no, absolutely.
I think we would like it to reflect more of our actual fees and the estimate to be more in line with maybe the average of the last 2 or 3 years.
And we can put that footnote at the top in much bigger font too, to make that.
Yeah, or just maybe an extra line. I don't like, I wrote in there. You can keep that.
And we appreciate that you're always conservative, which is great.
Yep.
This winds up almost misleading people.
Absolutely. And completely understand. So, yeah, we will make those adjustments, and I believe, our photo on our team is where you can send me Chris, different templates and different ways to, show those estimates, but in a way that minimizes, anyone that can take a guess.
Well, Chris, just could you state what our actual fees were for those years, just so we know that.
Yeah, including cash, they were 0.3. If you exclude cash, which I will touch on later, which you can see.
So not 0.4, but 0.36.
Correct. Yes. So really just to conclude on the asset allocation, discussion, I think we've touched on, the major themes, real estate being one of them. Real estate is a subset of, real assets, contained infrastructure. That's another area that we're currently discussing, with staff, and I think that we interested, keeping the conversation going, making sure that all questions have been answered. I think that would really conclude the asset allocation discussion for this month. So we picked up for next month, with, some additional mixes to take a look at. We just mentioned cash, the portfolio allocation with and without cash. We have been, blessed to be recipients of RRP funds. So within the asset allocation, we'll also look to model out a exponent that contains cash. And then with that, I'll pause and see if there are any comments or questions on this portion of the conversation.
I did want to actually ask a couple of questions about the first document in our package. Is that it's this one, that allocation study.
Yep.
Just a couple of things, and if you want to kind of, any things you want to talk about next time, just let us know. So on page 4, there's an executive summary.
Yep.
There's 2 things, one kind of larger and one we're usually about. The first is the larger. On that page, and at the bottom line, there's an average return, average volatility. Let me ask you one other thing. For the returns you're showing here, accumulator growth.
These are, net, sorry.
So there are 3 different mixes for the IPS target.
Yep.
Which is at 0.78. And then the other 2 are slightly higher, 0.79, 0.80. The IPS is where we are, where we're suggesting to stay. The other 2 actually have better ratios there. And I know that's oversimplifying, but I just wanted to kind of walk through, since the document shows why it makes sense to stay with a slightly lower of the 3 ratios, and why, for mixed D, for example, the return is higher.
Oh, yep,
At a lower volatility.
absolutely. So this is page 4, and Dave, you and I definitely tag team this, but page 4 just gives, again, as Rob said, a couple of different mixes, a couple of different options. The current mix, 2Q23, just takes the actual asset allocation as of 6:30. IPS targets these the approved weights that we can be at. So this is the midpoint of the range, plus minus 5% relative to the range. Mix A essentially just adds a little bit more to fixed income, but is largely unchanged from the IPS bucket. So it's a little bit of an incremental de-risk, but again, nothing meaningful enough material. It just really signifies that there aren't, huge themes or bets that we're looking to make in this iteration of the asset allocation.
Here you see both the return and volatility put in, so it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. It just really just highlights the thing with foreign fixed income bring down the overall vol a little bit in the return. Now, mixed B, and I think this is part of the ongoing conversations that we're having with staff. Mixed B, the key change here is if you look at private equity, the private equity allocation does jump up. So it goes from 10% in the IPS target to 15%. So the increase in private markets really shows that, expected downside volatility comes down like a standard deviation. And then expected returns will bump up a little bit. So as we continue discussions with staff around the right sizing of the strategic weights, and as we think about private markets versus open markets, liquid markets, I think this illustration here really points to the fact that yes, that illiquidity premium, particularly on the private equity front, has been one that's rewarded us tremendously. And they felt
It's a great, so I think what you're saying is the B can get slightly higher return, slightly lower volatility, but you're giving up some liquidity to where you think, and that's the trade-off.
that absolutely. So that is the trade-off. Yes.
These studies distill portfolio construction into just two variables: expected return and expected volatility, distribution or dispersion of return. What we're not capturing here explicitly are other risks like transparency, the liquidity cost, all of that is part of this discussion. But here, based on market efficiency, that's a more efficient portfolio. But to your point, locking up capital, locking up an additional 5% capital.
Any other big trade-offs between target and it's really.
No, that's. So it's
Fixed income, that's essentially their source.
That's where you did.
The capital, we're going to talk about, like, equities come down slightly. Kind of a little bit of everything else to put the 5%.
Yeah.
But primarily from fixed income.
And the other thing you mentioned is, or I'm talking about cash, we're never not going to be like a weekend. Right, it's just the way our cash flow works during the year. So not showing cash, it kind of instance of what we're showing for return and volatility always going to be slightly different from the reality of them go through. Which I think is why I wanted to do Kristen, which is important. She said, here's how we do the policy there. Here's how we discuss it for generic. And we put some part of cash in the allocation so we can actually look at the reality of what we face with the.
Yeah, so that would be the plan for the next iteration of things. I think 2 to 3% is pretty reasonable. It's also a much different environment today versus 2016.
Yeah.
Where
Yes,
right. As soon as there's any type of cash coming into the portfolio, we're putting plans in place to deploy that cash because you need that money to the opportunity cost of creating cash versus the markets was that much more significant. Right now, I mean, who knows what the Fed's going to do, but right now, interest rates are up. Interest rates are at a healthy level. The drag will likely be there, but it may not be as significant once we think about the 2-3% allocation to cash and where yields have gone. So yeah, absolutely. That rate incorporated.
And then the last question, and the last thing from the table, what we're next to. Chris also brought up would the gap between what we're showing in a return and what our assumed rate of return.
Yes.
Whether that gives them opportunity to look at the portfolio structure facing volatility.
Yes, and one of the things that will basically bias is within the IPS targets. The nice thing is we have a ±5% range. So as we look at different mixes, the more conservative mixes will still be, a derivative of where we are today. But that +5% is probably going to go into fixed income, take that away from equities, and ultimately within the framework we have, we can still lower that target rate of return, but still do it in a manner where we're not, we think, significantly different the building.
Yeah, and the board could look at that and say, you know what, we like these, makes it better,
Absolutely.
it'd be good for us, to-
Absolutely.
Chris, just one more thing about. It drops the private equity, we move away from the United Gas target percentage. All right, 2Q23, it's actually private equity is 12.3%. So it's only 2.7% away from that 50% target. But that 2.7% create a three times from your perspective.
No,
We don't have to answer now.
I mean, at a high level, no. I mean, one of the other trade-offs, and, sort of is broadly agreement with Marquette, would have to be as a public plan, cognizant of the fees. I mean, in some ways, that would be, to me, more of a concern than the liquidity. And we've been in cash flow positive plan, I don't think.
You've been what?
The cash flow positive plan for 5 or 6 years.
That's
With expense fees of 3. So I have less concerns about the liquidity than I would about the fees, or excuse me, but more concerned about the fees than liquidity. Given the cash flow, but I do understand and recognize Clayton's point, that is something to take into consideration. The trade-off, as Rob noted, though, is you're sacrificing a little bit of liquidity to try to make a little bit more on the back end for appreciation. So that's the trade-off.
It's a great discussion, because they're all, like Dave said, there's multiple there, this is just a couple.
Yes, yep, yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you. You got a question? Okay, then we'll revisit. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you, that would be great. And Lisa. Three like that.
Sure, through the second quarter, again, really positive, both broadly, post second quarter, year to date, brokerage on the equity side, about 46%. Ratings. As always, we provide the brokerage that we see in commissions. And then on the last page, again, strong numbers for fixed income, 44% quarter, 39% year to date. Just follow up briefly on MetLife, they tend to plateau somewhere between, we'll call it 24%. Lengthy conversation with them about specific trades they make and firms that are engaged in that. It's a limited number of firms for MetLife. I did reach out to the very large minority of the broker who's indicated that is not lip service that the firm is paying, that there are very few firms that engage in. They're called TBA trades. And very few firms handle those. Because MetLife engages in a lot of those, they naturally dilute their number, but not through any, affirmative decision to try to for the goal.
Any questions? I'm gonna take us to agenda item 4.
Just, briefly on the returns, I will note that the estimates we send this week will come out Friday instead of tomorrow, just after the on August. We continue to keep an eye on, some pretty serious, macroeconomic, headwinds, inflation, and interest rates, as we alluded to, and oil prices, gas prices have started to spike back up a little. They're hovering this year where I am about $4. We have a particularly cold winter. We would expect oil prices to become more of an issue. The labor real estate struggles, we've covered that some length.
Can you talk a little bit about?
Sure. There's been an uptick, at least what we're hearing anecdotally. You may be reading, we actually, Kristen was talking to a couple of banks this morning, has there been kind of a quiet uptick in layoffs? We're hearing anecdotally, yes.
Yeah, and I think there was an article, it's not actually layoffs, companies are finding different ways to.
We were talking about that this morning, right there. They're not letting you off, but they're reassigning you. And if you don't take the job, do they don't have to count that as a layoff?
Right.
And some of the examples are pretty extreme. I mean, sometimes it's a
I
light.
hope you enjoy
light job.
working in no.
Right, or, you're a seasoned executive and then they want you to drop down to where you were right out of graduate school or something. So is that really being reflected in the numbers? We are hearing, banks and some other folks are doing some kind of quiet reorganizations and layoffs. That's a concern. Consumers, even when there's good economic news, there continues to be this real undercurrent of like look at consumer sentiment. There's just a disconnect between some of the data. And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, is what's going on with China. It's also happening at the real estate level, and the fear of, broader consumer is still in the probably part of the age. The estimated fiscal year returns through the 22nd. For this year, it's negative 1.45 above the benchmark. For the month of July, just under the benchmark at 2.1%. Year to date, directly in line with the benchmark. Fees. No actionable concerns with any of the managers. We have discussed Fidelity and Global Low Ball. They got off to a slow start. We've been fully invested here. But a lot of the things that we had hoped and thought would have occurred then have started to play out.
They waited until we showed. They.
Yeah, they waited till we. But again, no other.
Wait, no, we would complain earlier.
Correct. But no actionable concerns. Made.
Takes us to item 5.
Just quickly, securities lending, a little north of $150,000 for the month. Just over $1 million for the calendar year to date, and just under $53 million. Starting the program. Strong, as they have been, female diverse, local managers, percentage wise at the end of July, over 59% combined, 52.9% NW is broken out individually, and just north of 9% for counties. Lastly, the upcoming board meeting, September 28th, October 26th, and then yet to be determined November, December.
Can I ask, so September 28th, I'll be traveling for my day job. I'm traveling back that day. Now I could zoom in, I'll be available during the time, or we could move it to Friday, like live. Which I would prefer, but there's a lot of people involved.
I'm with
Is that the 18 meeting?
The September 28th meeting.
It's a good reason. But then 18 is from 9.
All right, oh, that's, yeah.
Well, let's start from 9. But
Okay. Let's go, let's- okay.
yeah,
Brian, we're gonna be.
Right.
It's big time.
So we're moving.
yeah.
I'm helping, I heard. I don't know.
Couple of people, I think, it was a bonus.
Yeah, I'm picking up on it right now. I don't need to know.
And we got your presentation this month, Barbara.
Pardon?
We already got your presentation this month, so.
Yeah, yes.
So.
We got my presentation already. That's right.
Loves the 18.
Pardon? You love the 18. In person. Yeah.
Any new business?
Let's see.
Any new business, any old business? Fair motion, it's been moved, we're adjourned, if you're adjourned, I'd like to call the
She talking about 18.
full board back.
Not gonna happen.
No, it's not gonna happen.
That's the mayor's meeting. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
There a motion to affirm actions taken by the committee and for now. Second?
I'll say.
Okay, I'll call the roll and Before she left, Jackie actually gave a speech on some better order, so I won't. Brian? Lee? Martha?
Approved.
Vanessa?
Approved.
Carolyn?
Approve.
Roosevelt? Approved. And Paul? Approved. Carries. Any new business approval?
Yeah, we forgot, I'd like to make a motion to approve if any staff or trustees want to attend the NC Fall Conference in October. They can do that. They're back in that motion.
Okay, I will call the roll. Brian? Lee? Marcia?
Approved.
Vanessa?
Approved.
Carolyn?
Approve.
Roosevelt? Approved. Paul? Approved. Any other new business? Any old business? Any to move on property second to your turn? You in September.
Good song.
And all, yeah. Thank you.
Working hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was all right. Yeah, good. Do you have a good month? Yeah, my 40th birthday now. Yeah.